Welcome to the various topics. Today we are going to discuss about very hot topic in every corporate and top league organization, which they discuss annually, biannually, quarterly benchmarking. So hope you have all talked about benchmarking and understood about it in the various sessions. So what is benchmarking and what is true benchmarking is all about? Today we are going to discuss about it. Okay. So it's very common phrase that it's benchmarking is apple to apple comparison. It's not apple to orange comparison. But does people understand about what is apple to apple comparison and apple to orange comparison? Or are they comparing red apple with the green apple, which is having a both altogether called as an apple but with the different properties? So it's very important for any organization to understand what benchmarking is. So here we go. Before jump to the topic of benchmarking, it's very important for any leader to understand the tendency of benchmarking. As since it involves a lot of cost, human resource, and financial implication to the projects and to the operational team. So we need to understand whether your organization or corporate leadership is really interested in doing the true benchmarking. Are they serious about it? Or they are just doing for the sake of doing it? So you need to have a right answer towards that. If you're able to close the answers, then we can start with the activities and we can start with to understand what true benchmarking is. In this video, I would be sharing that what benchmarking would be. I would be just demonstrating a couple of examples to you along with what should be the right structure of benchmarking. I'll come with an approach which I call it as a benchmarking approach, and where the key stakeholders which need to be defined, whether that's who is interested in benchmarking, whether CEO, CFO, chief of operations, or chief of technology, who is interested in doing the benchmarking. Why this question is important? Because benchmarking is a expensive exercise. It's not true benchmarking is really expensive exercise. You need to understand whether you are doing external benchmarking or internal benchmarking. When I mean external benchmarking, then you are inviting a lot of data sets from across the market. That means you are going to engage with the top consulting companies who are going to provide you data with respect to the different geographical region. And what is the aspiration towards the benchmarking? What is the aspiration in fact behind it? Whether you want to be a global player, you want to be a domestic player, or your target is with respect to the particular geographic location, for example, APEC, ANZ, MENA, or North America, or Central America. What is your aspiration? Or you are global centric, trying to perform and trying to understand holistically that across the globe how you're performing. So it's very important to gauge your stakeholders, and from the stakeholders' mouth, you need to understand that what is the importance, so that costs can be and budget can be figured out accordingly. The very first part, which I call it as a step one, which is further divided into 4 points, which is capture VOC, voice of customer. Who is your customer? As I mentioned, chief of operations, CEO, CFO, or CTO, or might be your BU head, business unit head, or any CXO, or anyone who is sponsoring the entire project, who is interest party, whether it could be your client is interest party, right? You need to capture the VOC. What is the VOC they are looking for? You need to have the right statement in place. And what are the timelines? Second part is very important is timelines. Many people think that benchmarking is very easy exercise. You have some metrics, you map the metrics, and later on you are coming with the theory. You have observation, you have variation plots, you are having a recommendation on top of that, and deployment. It looks easy, but it's not. So you need to understand the timelines. Most of the projects, especially benchmarking projects, are set up for the failure. When I'm talking about the setup for the failure, they assume that it can be done in a week or two, but in reality, it may take 5 weeks to 9 weeks to the extensiveness. So, someone is trying to do benchmarking in a week or two, so they are trying to just project it as a failure project, which I will call it as. It's not a true benchmarking. They are just doing some small comparison and trying to publish, because when we are talking about the timelines, so data is dependent on resources, we need to understand. When we are talking about any project benchmarking, company benchmarking, so that means we are talking about various department, various metric structure we are talking about. We are talking about various set of data which has to drive through systems. And when you have to drive through system, there are various calculation, baselining, right? So you're totally dependent on the big structural team. Even if someone says, no, we are automated, we have MIS in place, we have balance scorecard in place, right? Everything is in a flip of a button. It's a part of a dashboard. But when you try to compare it, you understand the numbers which your company as a SLA, KPI, or balance scorecard are showing are of no use, because the numbers which you're supposed to map with respect to the global peer organization is completely different. The metrics are completely different. Then again, you are back to the same circle. You have to again map with respect to the global standards. So it's very important to have the right timelines in place. And this is with respect to capturing the right VOC, which is point 1A. Then business need and financial model. This is the third part of point A. 1, sorry. So we need to understand what is the business need behind it. Are we competing with respect to within the geographies? Are we trying to, this is the first time activity we are trying to do, or this is an annualized activity we are doing it? Are we trying to understand our margins? Are we trying to reduce our cost structure? Or are we trying to see where our footprints are and how we can penetrate our footprint? So we need to understand what is a business need and what is a budgetary need behind it. Now the fourth most important part is business impact area, where it is going to impact. Whether that's having an operational impact, operational efficiency impact, whether that's having a sales and marketing impact, where we are targeting, or if it's having a across organization impact. Till the time you are not able to define the areas where it's going to impact, because ultimately those teams have to support with the data. And data is not a one-time collection of data, that data has come once and you are just done. No, it's a to and fro, because you have to calculate and recalculate with respect to the numerator and denominator, which is a part of a benchmarking activity with respect to every parameter. And parameters are mapped to levers, which is an imperatives, which is being defined by CFO, CEO, and all the departments and the business unit heads. Right. The biggest mistake which we do, we think that the KPIs which we are measuring currently with respect to the processes or with respect to the projects or SLA, which has been signed and agreed, are the key baseline for us to do the benchmarking. Those could be baseline, you can take it as, but those not necessarily that you have defined in such a way, other department has defined in the similar way, or other organization have the similar structure in place. Give you a very small example. For example, Sony Musical and Universal Music Studio. Do you think that their KPI metrics are same and absolutely look like same? Answer is no. Their financial metric may be different. They may have a different level of penetration. They may be having a different type of definition, what they call it as a DSO, days sales outstanding. Numerator definition and denominator definition could be different. But yes, on a financial parameter, we can say that yes, broader, this is a standard parameter, standard numerator should be, standard denominator should be. But does this mean every company is complying with that? No. When we take an example, help of various agencies who are supporting us with respect to the benchmarking, whether you're talking about Hackett, you talk about APQC, you talk about Gartner, you talk about Everest, right? So what they do, these consulting companies help various corporates and fortune companies to structure their parameters and metrics and the way it should be calculated. If any particular company is formed under that segment and you decide to copy that, you decide to do benchmarking against that, so that means you have to follow the similar standard. Again, you are depending on the data set, which should be provided, which is normally provided by the human resources. So that's why impact area is very important. So back to again point number B, which is a point first B, we are talking about the timeline. So it's a recalculation again and again. So spending much time on the point 1 is very important to understand recalculation, all the point, what is the budget, what is who all are getting impacted, which areas getting impacted, what are the timeline, true realistic timeline we are aiming at. Now coming to point 2, call it as a validation, whether it's a client's interest in the benchmarking need to be assessed, or it's our internal benchmarking. Now, you may be a direct supplier. For example, let's talk about any of the company like Aegon Energy. Aegon Energy says, I myself is a client. I need to do parity check with respect to other energy company. But there are multiple suppliers to Aegon. There are multiple vendors attached to Aegon. So do I need to have them partner, or am I working with any of the vendors to support that, or it's my independent study internally? You may take example of St. Gobain glasses. Asahi is the biggest competitor or St. Gobain glasses, right? So in the same way, so you need to assess whether that's an internal organization or for the client. So you need to define that benchmarking part. Very important. Again, for whom you are doing it. For the client side, internal, what are the inclusions, what are the exclusions, need to define. We call it as a scoping activity. So scoping has to be elaborative in place. This is like more like a charter. When you're preparing a charter, various black belt projects or lean projects or any project management PMP project, they define charters, right? This is a very similar activity. We do it, like you need to define the charter in place. Point 2, step A, client business owner discussion. So ownership discussion is again very important part in every type of project, whether it's a PMP, you talk about Six Sigma projects, or any improvement, any project management, any efficiency driven projects across the organization. Project owner discussion is the most important part, and agreement on that. Who is the owner, who is defined, who is again and again giving approval. Because, for example, CEO is an interested party, but CEO may not be owner, because you can't approach CEO again and again. CTO may be an interested party, but you can't approach CTO again and again, because he may not have that kind of time. Someone should be project owner for that, who is a direct impactive apart from them, right? With whom you can have a periodic discussion, daily discussion if required, or a weekly discussion, right? Validate contractual obligations. Again, if there is any contractual obligation you are getting into, for example, some client says in the third party business or within the captive business, yes, every year we have to do the benchmarking. So that means you are contractually obliged, and what level of obligation you are facing with. Again, coming back to the budgetary need, who is going to bear the contractual obligation? Is your company bearing the contractual obligation? Is there a tolerance limit which is defined, like 300k euro or 300k or $500,000 we have to support? Beyond that, client is going to support. Or is there an agreement with respect to total contract value, which is TCV, that within the TCV, if there is particular amount is set for the benchmarking, to understand that how we are performing globally, how we can improvise ourselves globally. Capture and validate, which is point 3C, again of point number 2. Capture and validate clients' previous exposure towards benchmarking. Now, it is very, very important, again, to understand how good client's team is. If they are quite new towards benchmarking, then your timeline is going to impact, your budget is going to impact. If they have prior exposure to it, then things could be a bit easier. But again, don't assume anything. If they have prior experience, still get into the thorough stage and holistic stage. It's not necessary that someone has the experience of benchmarking, they have done it. They have done in a true holistic way. They have taken external support of various agencies which are supporting the data. Many of the leaders, they do just comparison between the two processes, they call it as a benchmarking, but they don't know what kind of processes they are. A manufacturing process, if you compare with the service process, that means apple to orange comparison we are doing it. Efficiency in manufacturing, if I'll compare with the service sector, is it comparable? The answer is no. With respect to finance, we can compare it, but with respect to efficiency and effectiveness, we can't compare it. It's not the right way of doing it. So you need to understand what level of exposure they have, how they have done it, how they have achieved it, what are the agencies, if there is any external party involved in it, right? So we need to figure out that one. Step 3, high level key metrics of stakeholders. I'm not talking about base level metric, which is KPI and SLA, which is high level parameters, high level imperatives. So example would be cost to serve. The cost to serve can be impacted by various other 10 parameters. So whether that's a margin rate, what is the margin rate? Then efficiency, cost effectiveness, controls. These are various, I would say, imperatives which the company has defined. Okay, I want to just measure, do the benchmarking against the controls, and what are the controls in various processes and projects we have. And then comes the parameters apart from that, or the metrics apart from that. So we need to define high level metrics or high level, I would say, imperatives for the stakeholders. Then point number 4, type of benchmarking needs to be defined. Just give you example, whether it's a small size scale or blend of operations, business groups, as I told you in the first part, point with this when I was explaining point number 1. So you need to define that where benchmarking is required, whether that's operational benchmarking, marketing side, HR, which all department and vertical should be a part of that. If there is any particular vertical, for example, you selected operational vertical, operational what? Operational finance, right? In finance, whether the P2P, O2C, R2R, where you need to implement the benchmarking, or you're just saying, okay, P2P is included in this, and then reporting and controlling is completely separate. Or in insurance segment, for example, you say, okay, actuarial science, I want to do benchmarking in the actuarial science, right? So there are parameters which need to be listed with respect to the actuarial science. The study is going to be completely on the actuarial science, excluding rest of the department. If you say no, it's organization-wide benchmarking, then scale is wider because it has all the possible departments within the organization, whether that's admin, transport, logistics, operations, your underwriting team completely, your sales team, right? How you're working within the organization, your corporate group, various corporate structure, various business unit, everything would be a part of that. So what type of benchmarking we are getting into, you need to define it out here in the step 4 in an elaborative way. First, you are assessing the area so that you can define, again, timelines. In the point number 4, if it is required to revise the timeline budget, ensure you highlight to the right team appropriately and with an immediate effect. Don't try to wait for sign off, because what happens if you are not intimating the right team at the right time, often project get delayed, then it's all vicious circle of blame game and no one is supporting with the data. It's a never ending process. You have planned for 5 to 6 weeks, it may take 3 months in that case. And you are just doing, in that case, you are doing just a patchwork of formality, putting across all the benchmarking. It's not true benchmarking then. Then point number 5, then I have again divided point number 5 into 2, group A and B. A is validate with the benchmarking agencies of the supply of metrics related to process and as per geographical needs. So when you start building communication, or your marketing team start building communication with the benchmarking agencies, it's important to understand what type of data they have. So for example, I'm based in US and my product is quite new. It's been 3 years we are running in the market, and so far we have tested in North America and Southern America market, right? And we are aspirated to expand towards Europe. So that means I need more data towards European market. I will not opt for any agency who is just having a data with respect to US or APEC, because my interest is towards Europe to have the first to help me out how we should position. But we are talking about benchmarking, we are not talking about positioning. So that means we should have existing business in Europe. Only you can compare it. But as a marketing, they can also help you out. Okay, what are the minimum parameters you need to achieve it? Though the comparison would be incorrect. We are comparing because currently my organization is new, 3 years. I have US data. I want market in Europe. I've contacted XYZ player who is having a data towards Europe. They have supplied the data, but my data is of a US. Metrics looks something different. The result look different than European market, right? So whether that data will help me out, that data may help me out in taking the decision whether I should enter into European market or not, or what should be the right parameters, or where I need to just take the strategic steps. But in case I'm operating in US, I also have business in Europe, but I want to understand more depth footprints in Europe, then that data will make me more sense because I don't need data for APEC. I need data who is having a more data points of a Europe. I'll just give you an example. In various benchmarking studies, which I do with many of the organizations, so we contact agencies, they supply data points, they elaborate. When we discuss, get into the elaboration, they elaborate that we have more data on the North American market, less on the European market, more on the APEC market. Then it's very difficult for us to shortlist those agencies because we need more data on the European market rather than an APEC market. If my aspiration is getting into the APEC market, I would be looking more data points, or I will shortlist an agency who is having a more data point towards the APEC market. And just to notify you, not every agency is having data across the globe. So you have to be very cautious when you're talking with Gartner, when you're talking with Capterra, Everest, Bosch, or when you're talking with Hackett. So none of the companies are majorly having data across geographies or across different segment. If you're interested in ANZ, so you may find okay, 2 or 3 players are only having data towards the ANZ market, or MENA, Middle East and Middle East and Africa. So again, it's a very challenging part. I would say there are a lot of discussions which gets into, and there are a lot of call you have to take it. But again, this is a very important step, which I call it as a 5A step. Once you have defined internally, everything is sorted out. Now we are inviting external agency because now we are talking about money to be spent outside the company. We have to pay, right? We have to get into the agreement. We have to get into the agreement with the third party, right, to get the right data for us. Now, part B of point 5, if data availability is yes, then number of queries per quarter need to be closed. So there is a normally every consulting company, every benchmarking company, what they do, they supply you with the number of queries they would be addressing. For example, 4 queries per quarter, 5 queries per quarter. So that means you have to consolidate your queries and share with your coordinator across. For example, I tied up with the Gartner. Gartner agreed that okay, they are with the X amount, they are going to supply with the data, and we discuss about, we shortlisted Gartner for that, or Hackett for that, or Everest for that, for the sake. And we decided okay, let's go with them. And once we have decided, now the next challenge would be that how many queries we have to negotiate, because queries stands for example, we are looking for 100 metrics, and or if we are even asking for what are the global metrics available for this particular segment, performance segment. Let me give you an example. Shipping and logistics, let's take AP Moller Group, world largest player. They want to understand that how many cargoes, what is the rejection rate of a cargo on a dockyard, what is the depreciation, average depreciation or average aging of a cargo on the dockyard, or a container on a dockyard, right? And what is a, for example, goods laid at a dockyard with respect to the warehouse, what is the aging of that? They have a metric. But global, when you approach to the global player, they say no, these are the metrics which we don't capture. But what are the metrics which you capture at a dockyard level? So it's very important to understand, right? Then they will supply you with the 10 metrics or 15 or 20 metrics. Then clarification on the metrics, how do you understand it? They will give you with the definition and everything, numerator and the calculation behind it. Then it's again, you are getting back to your solution teams or operational teams to get those things understand it better, right? So these are the queries. So how many queries you negotiate, or your marketing team or your sales team, operation team negotiate with the consulting partner. So you have to draft it accordingly and be very cautious about it, because it costs a lot of money and it needs a lot of efforts to accumulate those information. So, and now let's come to point number 6. Collect metric with respect to the projects, processes with definition and measurement of scale. So, define every metric is very important so that you are comparing with the right definition. The way you understand the metric, your partner also, your contract partner also understand in the same way. Or the way they providing the metrics with the definition, you are also understanding the same way. The calculation with respect to numerator and denominator also should be same. It should not be like denominator is different for them and your numerator looks same, the way you are calculating. Okay, just take example of occupancy rate. People take occupancy rate they have a different calculation for the occupancy rate, utilization rate. So they have a different calculation for the utilization rate. We need to understand how globally different companies are capturing. When we adopt for any consulting partner or who are supporting us in the benchmarking activity with respect to data, so they accumulate definitions and data, how globally most of the companies are performing, how they have consulted to the various companies and accumulate the data and corrected their metrics and corrected their numerator and denominator. And we have to map with respect to that in order to compare, in order to do the benchmarking in the right way. So it's very important for us to define and capture the process appropriately. Now, you have certain metrics, for example, that has been calculated in the percentage. You look like, okay, the percentage is the only way, or time, but with very similar metric is being captured by your third-party agency, but with tweak in the definition, they're captured in terms of quantity or different measurement of scale. Will that be easy for you to compare it? The answer is no. You can't compare. Or it's some people force fit it. No, we can do it. But that would be illogical and irrelevant to compare it. You're doing nothing but just pasting it, nothing it. Don't do that. Don't do that. There are a lot of efforts when you have to amend your metrics, amend your definitions, capture the data with respect to how market has captured it, right? There are a lot of data which you require it. Do it. Holistically do it. If you really need an apple-to-apple comparison, define your numerator appropriately, denominator capture the data with respect to that appropriately. Very important point. I've seen failures at this stage. Most of the time company gets failure at this level because leaderships are too adamant. They feel that, okay, it's too much of efforts for them to again recapture the data, recalculate the data. They don't understand, no, we are working in this company since 10 years. We have never seen something like that. We are working in this industry since 20 years. We have never seen like that. No one is worried about your experience of 10 years and 20 years. We are only worried about how globally we are working. We are only worried about how globally X company is compared with the B company. No one is worried about 10 years of experience, 20 years of 30 years of experience. People may keep on boosting, no, these are the correct metrics. The partner has supplied incorrectly. Then you do not have signed up with those partners. Or you don't understand the benchmarking activity. So these are the challenges which is quite evident, and every second company is having these kind of challenges. Beware of that, be strong, don't get too emotional with this, right? Let's be practical and understand there is a problem which we have to solve, get the right benchmarking done. Then point number 7, consolidate and internally discuss all the metrics and see the critical impact on key operational drivers, which is again point number 3, which we are talking about. What are the operational drivers which we talked about, which are important to stakeholders, whether that's efficiency rate, your control, your penetration, your cost, right? Cost of operations. So again, recalibrate with that. What are the metrics you are comparing? You have to just put in the benchmarking study, ensure they are mapped with that. It should not work in a silo. That you capture certain metric which is not impacting anywhere. You want it to be for the sake of your understanding, you're the benchmarking. Don't waste money. Company resources are very important. Time and money is very important. So ensure that your every metric which you're working upon should be mapped to the operational drivers. and how they are impacting. If something is going down, operational driver should impact. It should not be, no, later on it will get impact. No, it will immediately impact. Point number 8, share process and metrics detail with the agency. They will rationalize which process is considered similar category in order to widen scope of benchmarking results. So in many companies, if you see that, I'll give you one of the examples. I was doing benchmarking of one of our entity which is into manufacturing, sales, and distribution at the same time. They were a big manufacturer in glass and gypsum, and at the same time, they also have their own internal distribution channel. Now, they don't want to do benchmarking of their manufacturing process. They want to do benchmarking of their distribution process. Now, since the company is categorized as a manufacturing company, but they want to do benchmarking of their distribution chain and supply chain, right? So which are the other companies who are into supply chain? So we have to target the supply chain companies rather than manufacturing companies, because what will happen? For example, a company which is, let's take example of Bombardier. Bombardier manufacturing engines for various categories, so they are manufacturers, but they also supply parts to the airlines, right? But they say we have our own distribution channel with respect to the heavy manufacturing of goods. But if I'll compare Bombardier with Airbus, Airbus says, no, I don't have my own distribution. I'm manufacturing, I don't distribute. The distribution chain is different. So Bombardier distribution cannot be benchmarked with the Airbus, because Airbus doesn't have their own distribution channel. So we have to see the similar fit. So that's why explore your project, explore your business type with the agencies or expert like us. We will help you out in which industry is nearby and which industry you can rightly fit into. Then get the metrics and done with that. Point number 9, get the metrics, numbers and definition, calculate from the agency and compare with the internal definition and recalculate before. Again, we have defined it and the point number where we have defined it. Point number 6, right? We collected it, but we have to define with respect to the definition. It's again to and fro process. That's why I mentioned quarterly, how many queries you can ask to the agencies, 4 or 5 queries, 6 queries, 7 queries, how many you have negotiated. Some may come as low as 3 queries in a quarter. They will not entertain beyond that for a certain amount of money which you have paid for, right? So you have to recalculate and recalibrate on the definitions which you have corrected internally with respect to the metrics and definition, numerator, denominator, and measurement types, how it's going to be measured, right? You have to validate the numbers and then share. Point number 10, after rationalization of definition and calculation process, recalculate as per agency and compare the results. It's again to and fro process, softly to and fro process, not hardcore. There is a difference between inquiry which you are sending it to the agency and cross verifying. Inquiry is considered as a new, cross verifying is the data which they have already supplied and you are re-verifying those data and you have a query on top of that, doesn't consider as a new inquiry. New inquiry is absolutely new, which is not related to the data which they have already supplied to. Gauge the variation, identify the low performance matrix and prepare actionables. That is again a benchmarking findings. Now we are talking about the results and benchmarking findings. So you have to identify which are the low performers with respect to the global parameters. Like we give example of European market. I already have business in European market and I got a data with respect to European market or US market. I have a business in US market and I'll see that how I'm performing with respect to one X parameter and across US and how my peers are doing. Then what are the actionables, how they are doing it, what are the best practice they have given it. The best part of including the third-party agency is they share the best practice at the same time. What they have done to reach that level. What are the extra steps they have done it. So you get the studies so that you can implement it. You can see the feasibility within the organization. Okay, these are the practical things. See, one thing is very clear. Every organization is different. Their atmosphere, culture is different. It would be, I would say, not correct or inappropriate to compare okay, recommendation done in X organization would be implemented out here. No, we have to think holistically, whether that's a doable within the organization, whether that needs a strong chain management on transformation to implement that, or how my current budget is with respect to the new age technology and re-engineering we have already bifurcated upon. For example, currently other company, every second company is eyeing on AI, artificial intelligence. Earlier it was machine learning and RPA. Right now, everyone is eyeing upon artificial intelligence, how they are going to perform. Right, they have factored the budget for that. So, my company, how we have with respect to the goals and objective, have we already captured those details, recommendations for the future purpose? And it's good if we have already captured and recommendation is also being done by the third party. That means we are getting into the right direction, but we have not captured and recommended by third party agency. So something is missing. Do we need to redefine the goals and objective again? So it gives us wider scope to rethink over our strategic activities or strategic meetings which we have done, or how we have set our goals and objectives across various projects and various departments. So we'll capture with the actionables and prepare the actionable list, where in the point number 10, where we have to see that how we can implement it. Then step number 12, which is again bifurcated into two, which I call it as a deployment of global practices. This is the most important. So I've seen people keep on saying that it's easy to recommend theoretically, but practically it's not possible. I understand practically it's not possible. That's why we call it as a chain management. Change management and transformation is not easy. It looks easy. The word is transformation, looks like a vocabulary word, good vocabulary word, and change management. No, it needs a lot of aspiration and efforts. It's not always a top-down approach. It sometimes requires a lot of efforts towards the bottom up. Right. So a team needs to be enough motivated. You need to motivate your team enough to ensure that best practices are being implemented, and how we can see the organization structure being changed. So step 12, which is the last step, I have again bifurcated into two parts. Validate as is status. So you need to validate what is the as is status and measure with the what would be the to be status. Then point number 12B, which is perform detailed gap analysis and prepare the deployment plan. And wherever there is a possible to deploy it, do the quick wins and deploy it, get the results, showcase the result, publish the results, and ensure that every quarter you are going to publish those results to the management so that they are enough motivated to implement other recommendations. And you will see that year on year basis in next 3 years of cycle, your organization is going to uplift themselves with respect to the mindset and global metric data, and will become an example for other organizations that how benchmarking would be done. So this is basically today's topic on the benchmarking. If you need any help towards benchmarking and how it's to be done, if you want my involvement to be part of your organization, so you can always put a comment on this, or you can reach me on connectnow.expert@gmail.com and just drop a text on that. So I would be just sharing the sheet on this session as a snapshot, so you can have a quick look at it, and happy to help wherever it is required. Okay, we'll catch you up with the next topic soon. Thank you. My name is Vikas Garg. So welcome to the various topics. Thank you.